Welcome, everyone, to this deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're pulling back the tent flap on a really strange world. It's the family-affiliated carnival.
Right, based on the sources we've looked at, and it's captivating, but also pretty unsettling stuff.
Definitely. It's not just, rides and games. It's described as this whole community.
A really unique assembly, yeah. They seem to thrive on things, or people. The rest of the world just throws away.
So our mission today, I guess, is to try and understand what makes this carnival work. Who are these people?
And what's behind that motto of theirs, embrace the bizarre? There's a lot packed into that.
You really have to start with the founder, don't you? Rika Wildley, the barker of the bizarre.
Mm-hmm. And the sources are clear. He wasn't always this. He was just a regular guy, had a family.
Until the fire. That's the key event, right? It took everything.
Everything just wiped out his entire world, left him completely, utterly empty, adrift.
And that's what he finds, or it finds him. This thing called the Wonder.
Yeah, the sources are pretty vague on what the Wonder actually is. Not a god, not quite a demon either.
Just something else.
Something ancient, it sounds like. Inexplicable, just beyond our usual reality, you know?
Okay. And it offers Rika a deal. An impossible bargain.
Basically, yeah. It hints that his family isn't really truly gone. Their essence is still flickering.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
Wow. Okay, so what's the price?
He gets a chance, just a chance, mind you, to get them back. But in return...
He has to keep the carnival going, keep the lights on.
Exactly, but not with, normal power. The energy source has to be, well, the essence of the forgotten.
Forgotten, people.
People the world overlooked. The lost souls, the ones who faded out before leaving a mark. Their essence fuels the carnival.
So that bargain, that's the heart of it all. His grief, his hope, powering this whole bizarre enterprise.
Absolutely. It's the core engine. The sources really emphasize that. Those lights aren't just lights, they're dot memories. Lives kept from being totally extinguished.
And this whole setup, this weird energy source, it shapes the entire community Rika builds, right?
Completely. The family affiliated becomes this sanctuary, a home for people society basically spat out.
And the strangest part maybe is how the things that broke them out
Here
there
become their strengths in there.
Madness isn't a weakness. Justice is intense, swift, brutal even.
And death. Maybe not the end. Damage turns into resilience. It's a total inversion of outside values.
Think about the characters mentioned. Ethan's sorrow, with the scars, the whisper.
Yeah, those whispers are his connection, his unique thing because of his damage. Or Gluttony the Butcher.
Right, he enforces the carnival's justice, purges the cruel.
Then there's Smoke, the collector, making sure every deal has its price like Rika's did.
And Raina Rose, the mask, the hourglass,
Yeah.
always crying. Living on borrowed time, it feels like.
Exactly. These aren't just performers playing a role, they're survivors. This is their found family, fiercely loyal.
And the sources, they're pretty insistent on this point, aren't they? They're not really monsters.
No, not in the traditional sense. In Rika's world, they're survivors. They found belonging and purpose when the normal world gave them nothing. It's all fueled by that strange energy, that desperate hope.
So for you listening,
Yeah.
it makes you think, doesn't it? What does it actually mean to belong somewhere when you feel like an outcast?
Right. And how does survival manifest? What shapes can it take when you've been pushed to the absolute edge, when the world tries to break you?
It's unconventional, to say the least.
Definitely. And maybe we can leave you with this final thought. It's directly from the sources. All monsters are human at the freak show.
Ooh, that's provocative.
It is, isn't it? What does that really say about the line between human and monster? And maybe what the true cost of hope and survival actually looks like. Welcome back. We're doing another deep dive today, and we're digging into some really rich, maybe slightly unsettling source material.
Yeah, it's from this specific carnival lore, and we're focusing on just one figure. They call him Gluttony.
Gluttony, okay. And just to be clear for you listening, our mission here is, well, it's simple. Stick to the text.
Exactly. We're unpacking his background, his purpose, his methods, but only based on what this source material actually tells us, what's revealed in the text itself.
Right. So let's start at the beginning. The source says, before this carnival got transformed by something called the Wonder, It wasn't the big spectacle it is now.
Not at all. It was, a wandering thing, popped up in empty fields.
Darker, more transient.
Definitely.
Yeah.
The text mentions it often faded away before dawn, and that's where gluttony first appears in the story.
And he wasn't gluttony then, not in the same way.
No, the source is quite clear. He was just the carnival's butcher.
Yeah.
Actually providing, good cuts of meat. Comforting, almost.
Huh. So feeding people. But the text says he was watching things, seeing more than just the surface level stuff.
He absolutely was. He looked past the painted smiles and the laughter. He noticed the things people tried to hide.
Like what? What kind of things?
Well, the source mentions bruises hidden by long sleeves, the quiet tension, between couples trying to look happy.
Oof. Heavy stuff.
And even the look in some kids' eyes, like they knew about cruelty already. Too young. He saw that hidden darkness, the real harm people were doing to each other.
Okay, so he sees all this festering behind the scenes, and he decides he can't just, keep cutting meat.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The source says he made a decision. He couldn't just watch. He had to act against those people.
The ones bringing the real harm.
Exactly. His purpose shifted. It became about cleansing, purging the carnival of anyone carrying that true darkness, as the text puts it.
So he becomes the sort of internal affairs, but way darker.
You could say that.
Yeah.
His focus was very specific. The predators, the poisoners, not the simply lost or broken people the carnival seemed to attract.
And his method,
yeah,
the source gets specific here, right?
Yeah.
And it's chilling.
It really is. He would apparently lead these individuals, the ones he judged as truly harmful, away from the lights.
Past the fun stuff, the tents.
Yeah, towards his own area, his butcher's domain.
Oh.
And specifically into the meat locker.
Right, the meat locker. That detail stands out.
And what the source says happens inside. Or rather, what doesn't happen, where no one spoke, where no one screamed.
It's just silence.
Silence. And then this line, where the sins of the wicked were carved away piece by piece until nothing remained but silence.
Wow, okay. That's unambiguous. It's brutal. Final.
Absolutely. Carried out alone in the cold. So then the wonder arrives, transforms the carnival. But gluttony doesn't leave.
He sticks around. Why?
The source suggests the carnival always needed him, even in its new, brighter, stranger form. His work wasn't done.
So he's still there now, in the current version of the carnival.
Still there. Still watching the crowds. Still hunting the predators. The source makes a really sharp contrast here.
What's the contrast?
While the main carnival collects the lost, the broken, and the misunderstood, gluttony collects the damned. Different targets entirely.
Which brings us to the kind of justice he represents in this world. It's not standard justice.
Not even close. The text emphasizes.
No.
No trials, no appeals, no second chances, none of that.
Just the meat locker.
If it's just cold steel and the quiet hum of machinery, the source says, it's swift, it's silent, eventually.
And he's targeting those who poison the weak. That seems key.
Very key. And maybe the most telling detail. After he takes them there, the screams fade into the hum, and no one asks what happens inside.
No one dares ask.
No one dares. That's silence from everyone else. It says a lot.
So, wrapping this up based on the source, gluttony is this figure of, brutal, silent justice, separate from the main carnival's purpose, focused only on removing the truly harmful.
A very specific, almost surgical, but utterly merciless function within that world.
And it leaves you, the listener, with this thought, right? Pulled straight from the implications of the text. What does it really say about the world this carnival exists in?
That it needs, and maybe even quietly accepts, this kind of justice, where nobody dares to even ask what happens in the butcher's meat locker. What kind of place allows that silence?
Okay, let's jump right in. We're doing a deep dive into Ethan's sorrow today, really looking at the source material you've gathered.
Yep.
The goal here is to get a quick, solid understanding of his story, the pain, the journey, and, where he is now.
And it's a story that really kicks off from a place of deep childhood hurt.
Mm-hmm.
The source material is pretty clear about that.
Hurt from his father, specifically.
Yeah, inflicted by his father. It wasn't just physical pain. The source describes it more like every interaction was a kind of battle, constant fight.
A battle at home. Wow, that's intense. So how did he deal with that? The source must mention a turning point.
It does. There was this one night The source says Ethan, well, he took matters into his own hands.
Yeah.
It describes the act as neither good nor bad, really. Just necessary.
For survival?
Necessary for survival. And that led to...
silence. In the house, at least. But then, almost immediately, something else started. Voices.
So the silence outside was replaced by noise inside. Voices. He wasn't really alone after that then. Never alone again, it seems. The source actually names them, the three whispers. They were always there, kind of, the text says clawing for control over his mind.
Clawing for control. That sounds like a constant struggle. What were these whispers? Like, what did they say?
Well, first there was the voice of childlike wonder, which sounds odd, maybe?
A little, yeah.
But the source says it was sort of innocent, guiding, talked about survival, finding purpose in it all.
Okay, guiding voice. What else?
Then the voice of focused lunacy. This one was the opposite. Chaotic, erratic. It twisted reality for him.
Twisted how?
It would insist his pain wasn't even real, that nothing felt solid, undermining his own experience.
That's deeply unsettling, a voice telling you you're not feeling what you're feeling. And the third one?
The third was the voice of darkness. This one was different. Cold.
Patient. Patient.
Yeah, it didn't push or yell. It tempted. It offered this idea of peace, but only through ending everything. Silence as, like, the ultimate freedom.
Wow. Heavy stuff. And these weren't just abstract ideas floating around, were they? The source mentioned something physical.
Right. It explicitly says their claws leaving deep scratches across his back marks that never faded. Like a physical manifestation of this internal battle. Part of him.
So he's carrying these marks, these voices.
Mm-hmm.
Where does he end up?
Eventually, he's in a place called the Ward of Sorrow.
The Ward of Sorrow. Sounds bleak.
It was. The source calls it a place for shattered minds, often forgotten.
But
here's the key thing the source points out. He was there, yeah, but waiting, enduring, not breaking, never breaking. He survived it.
Survived the isolation in this ward. Okay, so did his story end there, or did something change?
Something changed, big time. While he was in the ward, the carnival found him.
Carnival.
Yep, specifically the family affiliated. And this is where things really shift in the narrative.
How so? What was different about the carnival?
Because according to the source, and this is critical of the carnival, madness was not weakness. Those whispers he'd been hearing.
Yeah.
Here they were understood.
Understood. Not just ignored or treated, but understood. That's huge.
Exactly. He didn't have to pretend anymore, didn't have to act like he was whole, because, well, the source says no one truly was in the family.
So he found belonging.
He found a place where all those parts of him, the whispers, the scars, they weren't defects. They just belonged. It was acceptance.
So the carnival became his community, his home. It embraced the very things that had isolated him. So what's he like now? The source described him today.
It does. He's described standing tall, beneath the neon glow.
Yeah.
Still marked, definitely. You can see the shadows and scars.
Right.
But the key word the source uses, undefeated.
Undefeated, after everything. So what does he do now? Coming out of the ward, carrying all that?
Well, that passed, that weight.
Yeah.
It's actually his strength now. The source says he comes out carrying the weight of 1,000 screams. Basically the echoes of all those discarded minds.
Okay.
And because of that, he listens. He understands the lost souls, the people teetering on the edge.
Because he's been there.
Exactly. He knows what it's like to be haunted. And, maybe more importantly, he knows what it takes to survive that haunting.
Yeah.
His power isn't that he got rid of the pain, it's that he's carrying it forward, using it.
So Ethan's journey based on this source material, it's quite an arc. From, this intense pain and these internal voices through isolation.
Right.
To finding this unexpected community and a real purpose that seems built from all that difficulty.
Absolutely. It kind of flips the script on healing, doesn't it? It suggests strength isn't about erasing the hard stuff. It's about integrating it.
Yeah.
Using that knowledge, that lived experience, to actually connect with others who are going through it.
Right. So as we wrap this deep dive on Ethan Sorrow, it leaves a pretty provocative thought for you, the listener. Yeah. His story really asks, what does it truly mean to find understanding, find your place, maybe even find strength? Not in spite of the deepest struggles we face, but maybe, just maybe, because of them. Something to think about.
All right, let's jump right into this deep dive. We've got quite a fascinating stack of sources today. Old tales, forgotten texts, all kind of circling around this one figure, Smoke.
Exactly. And our goal here really is to unpack what these specific texts tell us. Based only on these accounts, who or what is Smoke presented as being?
Yeah, was he ever human? Or something else entirely? What do the sources actually say is most important about him?
That's the mission. We're looking at the core descriptions, the implications, trying to understand the figure these texts build.
Okay, so the first thing that jumps out really is how he's framed. Right from the start, he's an enigma, a question. Not really a character with a backstory, more like a force.
A force, an inevitability, yeah. And maybe a bridge to whatever comes next. The texts seem to say for the people who meet him, his origin just doesn't matter.
It's irrelevant. He simply is. That's the feeling you get.
And what's really striking is how consistently they describe his communication, especially near death. It's called the Reaper's Promise.
Ah, okay. What does he say?
The specific words quoted are, "Step along with me, I can show you the way because I am already dead."
Wow. That's direct. And the tone.
Always described as calm, completely without malice, no threat implied, just stating a fact.
Okay, so calm, direct. And usually his approach seems to be, well, patient. The sources say he doesn't push.
Right. He waits until someone is truly ready, is how they put it. Or maybe when it's just necessary.
So death, in this view, it's not punishment. It's more like a transition he helps with.
Exactly, a passage. But there's a big exception mentioned, a critical one.
Oh, what's that?
When he senses lies, or specifically poison, or if he sees harm done to the innocent.
Ah, so if those things are present.
Then he doesn't wait. The sources are clear. He makes the choice then and there. No waiting for readiness. He just acts.
Okay, that's a significant shift. Now, the sources also talk a lot about a specific place, the Carnival of Lights. What's his role there? He's not like a performer.
No, not at all. He's there, but separate from the show. His purpose there is singular. He collects.
Collects what? Souls? Debts?
Debts, primarily. The sources explain that every bargain, every promise made in that place, the freak show, it carries a debt.
And Smoke is the one who shows up when it's time to pay.
That's exactly it. He arrives to collect. And his appearance is described quite vividly, scythe gleaming, shadow long under the neon lights. Very potent imagery.
So in the carnival, does he hunt people down? Chase them?
No, interestingly, again, it's patience. Methodical. He just waits. The texts say he knows the price of every bargain when it's due. He doesn't need to chase.
He knows they'll come to him, essentially, or their time will run out.
Something like that. He's certain. And what happens to the souls he collects there? From the carnival specifically.
Right. What's their fate according to these texts?
They don't just disappear. They become part of something greater. That's the phrase used.
Something greater. Vague. Do they choose how?
No, that's the key point. He decides where they fit into that greater something. The choice isn't theirs.
So he's the final arbiter in that context. The texts say he's the last thing you'll ever see.
Within the carnival's lore, yes. That phrase comes up repeatedly.
Okay, so let's sort of recap the core picture from these sources.
Yeah.
We have Smoke. This fundamental enigma who just is. Offers a calm promise at death's door.
Usually patient, facilitating a transition.
But becomes this active collector of consequences, especially for deals made in the Carnival of Lights, holding the final say on where those collected end up.
And if you think about what that represents, beyond just the story, it's like these texts are personifying inevitability, consequence. The idea that choices, especially hidden ones, have a price that eventually comes due.
It definitely paints a picture.
So maybe a final thought for you listening to this, based on these sources. If some meet Smoke by fate, some because of their choices, like those carnival bargains, and others don't see him coming until it's too late, what might that imply about our own choices? About the unseen debts or consequences that might be quietly accruing, even now? Something to ponder, perhaps. Welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
We're jumping into, well, a really fascinating narrative you brought us today.
Yeah, it follows this woman, Raina Rose, through a pretty intense transformation.
And it also introduces this group, the family Affiliated.
That's right.
Yeah.
And our goal here, really, is to unpack Raina's journey. It's quite something.
Going from like deep devotion to, well, complete brokenness.
Mm-hmm. And then how she finds this new existence, you could say, within the Neon Carnival.
Among people described as survivors, creators, revolutionaries, it sounds intense.
It is, and there are these key images that keep popping up.
Right, you mentioned a damaged woman, obviously, but also a porcelain mask.
And an hourglass. Those three really anchor the story.
Okay, let's get into it. Where does the source start with Reyna?
Well, what's striking is how it grounds her before everything happens. You know,
How so?
it just describes her simply as flesh, warmth, devotion, a mother, a wife. There's this baseline of wholeness.
Ah, okay. Like she believed love meant giving everything, pouring herself out.
Exactly. Just trying to keep her world intact through that devotion.
And, well, the narrative makes it clear pretty quickly how badly that went wrong.
Yeah. It says love when it's wielded by the wrong hands. It just becomes cruel.
And it wasn't like one big catastrophic event, was it? It sounds more gradual.
Piece by piece, that's how the source puts it. Demand by demand. Each word, each cruelty.
Like each time she was diminished, something vital was just stolen.
Something irreplaceable, yeah.
Yeah.
That slow erosion is key.
Because by the time she really saw the full picture,
It was too late, in a way. She's described as hollow by then, used up.
just a shell of herself. Wow. It really shows how breakage can be this quiet subtraction.
Mm-hmm. And that leads us to the hourglass of escape.
Right. This is where the pressure just becomes unbearable, the inevitable breaking.
Yeah, she's actually contemplating the way out, the ending.
That's dark. And she gets mesmerized by the sand falling in the hourglass.
Exactly. Seeing each grain as a thought pulling her closer to, well, to the end.
Believing it might stop the pain, maybe. Lift the weight.
That's the implication. It really touches on that, deep despair and the allure of escape.
But the source says the freedom she wanted wasn't quite found there.
No, because the freak show found her first.
Ah, the twist. So this is where the physical transformation happens, the porcelain mask.
Precisely. Rika wildly welcomes her into the carnival.
And the woman Reyna used to be. She's just gone. Buried under all the suffering.
Utterly buried. So the source says she had to become something else.
And putting on the mask. What does that signify? Sealing herself off.
Becoming untouchable, maybe? Beyond the reach of the world that hurt her?
And the mask itself sounds quite evocative, streaked with black tears, smudged.
Yeah, it's like a permanent record of the emotions. It's not really about hiding, it's about revealing what she's been through.
But she keeps the hourglass, doesn't she? Holds on to that past.
She does. That moment she almost let go. She carries it.
So on stage, she's not just performing, she's kind of embodying.
Every woman history is shattered, maybe.
Uh-huh.
Who thought love meant sacrifice, but found out the world just takes.
And she walks silently, but her presence is huge. Hands steady, watching the greens fall, but not following them down anymore.
Yeah, the description is powerful. Once human, yet not entirely anymore.
The masks, the tears, the hourglass. It's not about healing then.
No, not really. It's more about the permanent marks of the trauma. Every step tells that story.
Okay, so how does this all tie into the family affiliated? They're under the neon carnival lights too.
They are, and they make this really bold statement, almost provocative,
Jizz.
that monsters do not exist only in shadows. They exist in humanity itself.
Okay, but Rika Wildley's world, it puts a different spin on that, right?
A completely different spin. What society might call a monster. It's viewed differently there.
How so?
The key line is, all monsters are human at the freak show,
Ah, so it flips the whole idea. They aren't defined by fear.
but by resilience. They're the survivors, creators, revolutionaries.
Fueled by the essence of the fallen, thriving because of what they endured.
That's the core idea. So, pulling it all together, Reyna's journey fits perfectly.
Being stripped down, reaching that breaking point, then finding survival in the freak show.
It illustrates exactly what the family affiliated represents. They look at the outcasts, the monsters.
And see human survivors, forged by pain, but survivors nonetheless.
Exactly, people who chose to keep going.
So Reyna, with her mask and hourglass, she's like this living symbol.
A powerful one, yeah. It suggests that even when you're profoundly broken, survival can create something a new form of being.
And the narrative seems to say time doesn't just heal these kinds of wounds.
No, it's more about understanding the past, carrying that hourglass, acknowledging it, but not letting it pull you down. That's how you find your footing.
It's less about healing, more like integrating the broken pieces.
Into something resilient, yeah. Something strong in its own way.
So, thinking about everything we've just unpacked from the source, here's something for you to consider.
If these so-called monsters are actually human survivors, shaped by intense pain and cruelty,
Then what does this narrative really suggest about the nature of strength, and maybe where you might find it when you least expect it?
okay, let's dive into a pretty interesting topic today.
Yeah. What do we got?
We're looking at a pro wrestling faction, actually, called the Family Affiliated.
Oh, okay. Wrestling. Interesting angle.
Right. But, the sources we looked at, they suggest it's about more than, just the wrestling part.
Mm-hmm.
We've got members like Ricka Wildley, Ethan Sorrow, Rado Rose, Smoke the Reaper, and Gluttony the Big Top Butcher.
Quite the names.
Definitely. And our mission here is really to unpack the core message, the sort of ideas presented about them in this material. It seems like they're spreading something powerful.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So what's the main vibe from the sources? What's their identity about?
What jumps out immediately is this focus on themes like self-acceptance, inclusivity, empowerment too.
So big ideas, not just characters.
Seems like the material frames it as what they genuinely stand for,
Yeah.
the foundation of the group.
Okay, and how do they actually do that based
Yeah.
on the sources?
It sounds like they do it by really leaning into their own uniqueness, their own bizarreness, as the sources put it.
Bizarreness. Okay.
Yeah, and instead of fitting in, they seem to amplify what makes them different, maybe even what others might find strange.
And the idea is that helps other people.
Exactly. By embracing it themselves, they kind of empower others to accept their own differences too.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. Which probably leads into that rallying cry I mentioned, right? Embrace the bizarre.
Yes, spot on. What does that really mean according to the material?
Well, the sources explain it as basically a call to action for anyone listening, really.
Like, don't hide what makes you different.
Pretty much. Celebrate your individuality. Push back against those societal norms that make people feel weird or ashamed for standing out.
Challenging the pressure to conform.
Yeah, especially if you're seen as unconventional or, well, bizarre.
And they have that quote too, the sources really highlighted it. All monsters are human at the freak show. It's impactful.
It really is. And the significance there, according to the sources, is all about seeing the humanity underneath.
Breaking down labels.
Exactly. It suggests that even people who get labeled monsters or are treated like sideshow acts in that sort of metaphorical freak show,
Yeah.
they're still human, fundamentally human.
Yeah.
And because of that, they deserve, basic respect, compassion, understanding.
Regardless of how they look or act.
Right, regardless of how different they seem from what's considered normal. It's about seeing the person, not just the appearance or the label.
So the sources are saying the Family Affiliated is actively using their platform, their visibility in wrestling, to spread this message. Love, acceptance, inclusivity.
Yeah, and apparently it's working. The material mentions that this message has really resonated with a lot of fans.
You can see why, can't you? I mean, in a world that often pushes conformity.
Right.
Seeing a group like this on a big stage, championing difference, finding strength in it, that could be, really validating for people who feel like outsiders.
Creates connection, a sense of belonging, maybe.
Which, brings us to you listening right now. We're talking about the Family Affiliated, sure. But this core message, embracing difference, challenging norms.
How does that land with you? Does it resonate? Maybe even challenge you a bit?
Yeah, how do these ideas about finding strength and uniqueness apply, outside the wrestling ring, in your own life?
When you boil it down, thinking about the Family Affiliated and what the sources say, it really feels like a powerful call for acceptance accepting yourself, accepting others, all the quirks and differences.
It's a reminder, isn't it, that celebrating individuality, owning what makes you unique, that's not just a performance.
No, it's like a real way to live, to connect with people.
So maybe a final thought to leave you with, kind of building on this embrace the bizarre idea.
Go on.
What if the very things that maybe you hide or that society labels as strange or unconventional, what if those are actually where your unique strengths lie?
Or sources of creativity, connection.
Exactly. What might you find? What could you discover if you chose to lean into the bizarre instead of away from it, both in yourself and maybe in the world around you too?